This is the John Oakley Show on Talk Radio, AM640.
Let's get right to the story that I was talking about yesterday, and then we had another incident with the police on Wednesday. 3 Toronto pot shops, including Cannabis Culture, a marijuana dispensary on Queen Street East, raided by police yesterday. That followed further other types of raids that took place earlier in the week. And, of course, this all began, I guess, back in May. At the end of May, remember Project Claudia, 90 people arrested during the bust, 186 charges under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, 71 criminal charges that was related to seized cash. There were bylaw charges. And essentially, the police have come out, and I can't see anything that they're saying that's not right. They said it's against the law. It's against the law unless, of course, you are licensed by the feds right now on medical marijuana to be able to sell it as medical marijuana. And even though the laws are going to be changed, apparently, you can't do what these people are doing. But it's causing all sorts of people who are upset about it. Jodie Emery, and you know Jodie, she's a political activist, a public speaker. She's part of the Cannabis Culture brand. She's going to be at City Hall this morning, Old City Hall, where a bail hearing's taking place. They're going to be holding a press conference, and she was nice enough to take out some time right now and join me. Hi, Jodie.
Good morning.
Good morning. I take it, before we get into all of the permutations and combinations, and I've heard you before and I've read things that you've said before, you're obviously not going to be very happy, or we're not very happy to hear that your store was raided again.
Oh, I'm absolutely distressed about it. I don't understand why the Toronto police are wasting their time and taxpayers' dollars going after innocent, peaceful, harmless people when there are much more serious crimes taking place in the city of Toronto. It's also very worrisome that they're continuing to enforce this policy in a much more heavy-handed way than we ever saw under the Harper government. And while you did mention the Toronto police note that only the licensed producers are legal in this country, the great irony is that those licensed producers only exist because of lawbreakers. It's only because of dispensaries and marijuana distributors and growers and patients getting arrested, going to court, and having the court order the government to provide marijuana access. That's how we have legal medical marijuana, and that's why licensed producers exist, only because of the civil disobedience and peaceful lawbreaking in decades past.
Okay.
So they owe their existence to these so-called criminal lawbreakers.
Let me understand one thing, though, Jodie, because I want to, and you and I haven't spoken before, so I just want to make sure I understand what your position is. You don't disagree, or maybe you do, and tell me if you do, that the only people right now, as the law stands, if a person has a prescription to get medical marijuana, they can only legally get it from a licensed Health Canada distributor. You don't disagree with that, right?
Oh, I don't disagree. That the system that exists allows a select few to have legal authorization.
Right, and everybody else, as the law exists now, can't do it, right?
But actually, right now, the medical marijuana program is unconstitutional. There was a federal court decision 6 months ago where the court decided that, first of all, the police were wrong to claim that there's danger from marijuana growing. They said that it's unconstitutional, the medical marijuana program, and they called the dispensaries the heart of access. So you have this federal court which has now ordered the federal government to rewrite the medical marijuana laws for these patients who are legal. That ruling is due this month. It's called the Allard decision.
Right.
And I guarantee you all these licensed producers are very anxious about it. Because remember that this current program of medical marijuana was set up by the Harper government, which is no friend of marijuana. It was designed to fail, this program. And in fact, we know that the Liberal government chief financial officer opened up a marijuana licensed producer called Tweed. So you already have these former police and law enforcement and politicians jumping in quick to make money on the stock market from these legal producers while they continue to arrest the peaceful citizens who made legalization possible through our activism.
All right, I'm talking with Jodie Emery, a political activist, public speaker. I'm going to get to what you're doing in a moment, Jodie. I just want to, again, and correct me if I'm wrong, many of these pot dispensaries that are out there right now, well, let's get away from the medical marijuana aspect. Part of the problem that the police are saying is that they have evidence, and that's reasonable and probable grounds to show that many of these pot dispensaries are selling marijuana to anyone, even those without any demonstrated medical need, correct?
Well, what we have right now is something called prohibition, and what it means is that everybody associated with marijuana should be arrested for it. In fact, Justin Trudeau himself should be arrested. He admitted to smoking and passing a joint, which is trafficking. But aside from the hypocrisy there, we know that many millions of Canadian adults use marijuana, and right now they're going to buy it from somewhere. Isn't it better that they buy it from retail storefronts that are open, transparent, paying taxes?
But it's illegal. It's illegal.
Right.
You want the police to turn a blind eye to illegal activity.
Well, let's ask why it's illegal. Something is typically a crime when there's a victim. But there are no victims with marijuana prohibition. And if tomorrow the government said coffee was illegal, well, every coffee bean roaster and cafe in the city would be guilty of crime too.
If it was illegal.
Right. So the law creates the criminals, and we need to ask, why is marijuana criminalized? Clearly, there's no benefit to making millions of Canadians into second-class citizens, wasting millions of tax dollars when our healthcare system is starving for funds and people are literally dying while waiting for their personal tax dollars to go towards healthcare instead. And yet you have the police spending millions of dollars on these raids. For what purpose?
Understood. And I understand where you're coming from, but isn't that a different argument? We're not going to. The argument isn't. Let me just ask you this. The argument isn't whether the law is a good law, bad law, an awful law. Even if it's the worst possible law in the world, and the government may change it next year, it is the law as it is now, and that's why the police are enforcing it.
The law is an excuse that died at the Nuremberg trials. Many laws are unjust. You know, the bathhouse raids here in Toronto were unjust. Yeah, it was the law. Yeah, freeing slaves, that was also against the law. What Rosa Parks did was also against the law. I mean, there's a great history of civil disobedience helping liberate peaceful people from unjust oppression. And that's why civil disobedience is so important.
So you think this is civil disobedience? Opening up retail stores selling marijuana illegally is like a form of civil disobedience?
Well, absolutely, because did you know that right now under Section 462.2 of the Criminal Code, it's illegal to publish any information about marijuana? Did you know that marijuana books and magazines in this country are illegal? That's the law. The law is the law. So why aren't the police going and arresting all of the shop owners that sell a Maclean's magazine that writes about marijuana? Why? Because the law is the law, right? So shouldn't they go
and you want to see it?
Okay.
So that your argument being that it should be enforced right across the board. So let me. What's happening today, Jodie? So I know you're at Old City Hall because there's a bail hearing for some people arrested.
Yes, and then I'm going to 711 Queen Street East, which is our Cannabis Culture franchise, opened up out there.
Right.
Our Queen Street West location at 801 Queen West was raided just recently as well. And yet you have to wonder, why is this enforcement happening? What harm is being done? Who's calling for these raids when we've had decades of peaceful civil disobedience resulting in no arrests at all? The unfairness in this law is demonstrated by the arbitrary enforcement. Again, if Justin Trudeau can admit to smoking a joint with his friends as a member of Parliament and passing that joint or trafficking, the law is the law, then why are other people like young, native, poor students being arrested? Why are young people across this country getting criminal records and being denied their right to travel and get work? Why are millions of Canadians second-class citizens because of this law? It doesn't make sense. Laws are meant to protect society from harm. cannabis does not cause harm. And as we all know, and as many listeners know personally, cannabis gives many people their ability to be healthy and productive and to contribute to society. And in the absence of a proper program of legalization, the courts have defended dispensaries and their right to exist.
By the way, any idea what the government, we understand there's some announcement coming out this afternoon.
I didn't hear about that, but it makes sense that the Allard decision is due. The government has to introduce new laws this month to allow patients to grow their own marijuana.
So that's going to be an interesting what they do there. All right, and before I let you go, Jodie, I really appreciate you joining me. What's the plan for at least Cannabis Culture? You're going to reopen?
We reopen every time. Mark Emery has been a leading activist with Cannabis Culture for decades in this country, and no matter how many times he's arrested, even when it's the U.S. government coming into Canada and making him face life in prison, we will not give up because we're doing this for reasons of justice and principle and the liberty of our fellow citizens who are oppressed by an unjust law that is long overdue for removal from our system.
Jodie, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you got a busy morning coming up, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for the time. Take care.
Take care. Jodie Emery from Cannabis Culture, and she's heading over to Old City Hall to hold a little, I guess, rally there for people who were arrested yesterday, and then she's going to be holding a news conference in front of her shop at 10 o'clock.
The John Oakley Show. Listen live weekday mornings from 6 till 10 on AM640 or download the app at 640toronto.com.